Alright guys, so today I have a 2000 Chevy Camaro with a Thompson 370 in it. It is running LSA Heads and a D1SC supercharger with the stock PO1 ECU on 210 injectors and E85. What I'm basically going to do is the engine break-in procedure, and then from there I'm going to start doing the tuning process. With the engine break-in procedure, it's pretty straightforward. I basically go in and I make some adjustments in the VCM scanner on a stock ECU, and I will pull timing and add fuel and vice versa throughout a varied RPM process. What I in turn end up doing is it elevates and then drops the cylinder temperature in process, seating the rings a little bit better. There's a bunch of different ways that people tell you to do it. You know, like when you buy a motor, you know, they go and tell you like, oh, you got to run it 1,000 miles before you can get on it or anything like that. And I never really have ever, you know, gone down that road of listening to that kind of stuff. Obviously, there's certain situations where it matters. In this situation, this is a street motor. It's got steel rings in it. You know, it's going to seat easily. You know, there's a lot of easy things going on there. And a lot of times the best way to get things to, you know, kind of seat in is to put a couple cycles on them with heat. There's a couple different ways to do that, but the easiest way that I have found to do it is to vary the ignition timing. Basically, by pulling the timing out, you raise the cylinder temperatures up, and then, you know, adjusting the fuel, and then basically right before I shut it off, I dump, you know, like I wouldn't say dump, but I give it like an extra splash of fuel as I go and decrease RPM to shut it off. It's a pretty straightforward process. I'm not going to go too far in depth with it any further than what I just did, but this is a brand new, fresh build. It was tuned and done by another guy like 6 months ago, maybe something like that. Basically, what ended up happening was the motor that was in it broke 20 miles after it was tuned. I'm not going to really get into why it broke, but you know, it's the long story. And you know, now he has a new motor in there, and we're going to go and get it, you know, all straightened out, and hopefully today goes well. So stay tuned, and I'll be posting some video along with this to kind of show you guys what the process is, and I'll go over the logs as we go as well to give you an idea. Alright guys, so finishing up with the dyno, basically we came up with 720 horsepower and 700 foot-pounds of torque on roughly 15 pounds. It was like 14.7 to 15.2 the whole way through. Pretty conservative tune. I didn't do anything too crazy with it. I just kind of kept it, you know, where it would be a good area for break-in and all that kind of stuff, and let him get through, you know, the process of kind of figuring out the car and everything. One of the things we kind of encountered along the lines while we were doing it was the converter is too loose on this. This is the second car I've had as of lately where the converter is just not built to what the spec of the car is, especially when the torque hits real hard on them. You know, this thing is making, I don't know, it's like over 7, it's like right at like 600 and some foot-pounds at like 3,000 RPMs. It's ridiculous. Like, once I bring in the log up, you'll be able to see like how quickly it comes up on the boost. Because of that, it kind of feels like a snowmobile, I guess is the easiest way to put it, when it goes through the pull. So it makes it a little difficult to, you know, really get like a completely clean tune, or not tune, but pull with it. And it can skew the numbers a little bit when it's slipping like that. So there's a possibility it's making a little bit more than it is, but you know, 720 is pretty darn good with what this setup is and the low amount of boost that we're on. And with it being on E85, 14 pounds, I'd like to see this thing on like 18 pounds. It'd be pretty awesome. Anyways, what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over to the log. I'm going to show you guys the chart real quick, and then we're going to switch over to the log, and I will explain what I did, where I found some stuff on it as far as like where the timing was happy, where it wasn't, and all that fun stuff, and we can kind of go from there. Alright guys, so here's our dyno chart. From here, I'm going to go over to the log and show you guys a little bit about what's going on with the log. Pretty basic. layout here, I put 2 runs up, and then I'm going to go over the log and show you a little bit of what's going on there. Picked up some with more timing. 20 at the end is what it went to. 20? Yeah. It picked up 5 horse. It's yeah, I added, so I went from 11.7 to 11.5 is where it's at right now. So I'm gonna pull a plug, look at it real quick, and then all right guys, so I put a little quick clip in there of screen record while I was doing the dyno pull. Kind of sounds cool, kind of doesn't, but here's that run. Where I'm at right now, this is me cruising. I'm at 2,700 RPMs. I hit the throttle, and we go 100% TPS. We are looking at, it's about 154 kPa, which is about 7 pounds. And as you can see here, I'm logging the wideband down here, and this white line is our wideband line. The yellow line is our cylinder air mass. What I should do while I'm here recording this is bringing up our timing table, but I'm going to start over. Alright guys, so I did a quick little clip there, screen record while I was doing the dyno pull on this. Kind of sounds cool, kind of doesn't, but you kind of get to see things live as they're happening, which is kind of cool. And the VCM scanner. This is the way I have my VCM scanner set up for this type of setup. Pretty straightforward. I have the wideband down here, and I have basically on the bottom end here, I got the wideband with our chart plot, and then I have a reference line of 12.0. And then we also have the cylinder air mass calculated right here, as well as the map PSI. I don't really pay attention to the O2s on this too much. This is our spark line here versus TPS. You're going to see there's no knock, obviously, on this because we're running E85, and really at this point the knock sensors don't mean anything. And then this is our map reading in this purple line, and then we have injector duty cycle, we have the speed of it, and then we also have the RPM. So basically right here I go full throttle, we're at 4,000 RPMs almost instantly. I started the pull at 2,700. It's kind of interesting to see the little bit of delay there is on how quickly it sees the TPS go up compared to the RPM. But whatever. So we start to pull, and the thing that is beneficial to notice here is basically I'm at 27 RPM, 2,700 RPMs right here, and within basically a split second, you know, I don't even, we can sit here and look at this closer, but within a split second, I'm at 6,000, which tells you the converter's too loose. That's the first thing. Now we come right up one boost. We get the full boost, you know, basically within that same split second that we get into the throttle, we're at 200 kPa. And then just to kind of reference it out, we're at 11.8 AFR. Our spark timing is 17, and our cylinder air mass is 108. This is really difficult for some people to kind of get it right, but the basics of this really on the Gen 3 ECU is you can't change the cylinder air mass scale in the timing table outside of, I think it's like 125 or 120, something like that. So a lot of guys, what they'll end up doing is they'll make their modifications and they'll never get the timing right. So what they'll do is just use that last line to whatever it gets to. As you can see here, we stay at about 1 the whole way through. We're not maxing out the table, and that's what I'm really looking for, but I still want to use the entire table. So I've seen other guys have it where, you know, a run like this, you'll see it be like 0.7 is all they're getting out of the cylinder air mass scale. And the beauty of it is trying to find the center of that on what your power is. That way you're still using the whole scale the way that GM intended the ECU to work. On some of the other ECUs, you are able to go in and change that cylinder air mass to adapt to whatever you want to. On a P01, you don't really have that option, so it makes it a little difficult. Anyways, so 6,000 RPMs, as you can see, we basically hold that the whole way out through here. It sits on the converter pretty interestingly, the way that it does it. But we're at 17 degrees of timing. We go to 17.5 at 6,400. You can see I start giving it a little bit more fuel at this point. We get down into the 11.4s, 11.6s, and the timing comes up a little bit as we get up through there. We clip the rev limiter at 7,000 RPMs, and we are at 18 degrees and 11.7 on the air fuel scale. So one thing that I will say about this is this spark line right here is lower than what I would normally see with a setup like this. Normally E85 on 14, 15 pounds, I'm going to be above 20. But this car was happy at this, you know, this timing rate. I pulled plugs when it was at 13 degrees of timing, maybe even 15 degrees of timing, and it was barely on the strap. It was barely showing any timing mark whatsoever. But then I bumped it to 18, and we saw it right at the bend. It was very quick that it went to that spot. ProCharge setups are a little bit different than turbos are. I do a lot of turbo stuff, and I do a decent amount of ProCharge stuff, but you know, it's one of those situations where it was kind of interesting to see how this, you know, all transpired here. You know, I threw like 20 degrees at it into one run, and it made the same power. So we ended up, you know, at that basically at 17 degrees. And 15 pounds of boost. You know, it seemed to be pretty happy. And about basically it left in about the 11.6 to 11.7 range for air fuel scale. That's really it with this. It was a very straightforward setup. It had a couple little hiccups that I had to work on initially, but it worked out really well with how well it went together and made power and didn't really give me any problems once it started going. I guess one of the other things to kind of look at here is with 210 injectors, we were at 63% injector duty cycle. I usually look at the milliseconds, and we were at 11.1 milliseconds. At 6,500 RPM, 6,800 RPMs, we'd be maxing them out at about 18 milliseconds. So we still have a lot of injector left here. This was also tuned on low fuel pressure. I tuned it on 43 pounds instead of 58. Yeah, that's really it. You know, pretty basic setup. This thing basically fires right up and runs and is a pretty street drivable car. He's going to change the converter and, you know, do a little bit more break-in, and we'll probably end up turning it up a little bit more down the road. But for right now, you know, pretty happy with that 720 horsepower. So thanks for tuning in, guys, and I will see you on the next one.